So this is going to be my first talk in general I'm going to give for this large audience. So, I could have started with some other jokes like, knees weak, arms are heavy, mom spaghetti, but, and that's how I deal with my stress, I try to joke about it. So, but I'm not here for the jokes. I'm here to give, a quite serious presentation, or at least my view of it. So, without further ado, very simple.
Nesse girdi, we can't really hear, so Mike?
I'll just take it here. Better? Okay. So now you can see my arm shaking actually. So yeah, you can find me, on these links. If you find me roaming, you can also scan this. Free real estate for the commercial side as well. Contact me for that as well if you want. But before this, simple agenda. The challenge in general, how I thought, what should I measure to test different things. Three main competitors, short intros about them, about the components, and then shortly about comparisons. What kind of triggered me in general, you can see, Zach Wilson is quite a huge data influencer, if you're not familiar. Strongly suggest to follow him, but his opinions are his, not mine, but actually it kind of went perfectly with my talk. Right? He's thinking that Airflow becoming the weakest link, and which might be replaced at some point. Though with this, we'll see at the end how it actually is, right? So the challenge I thought, it should be quite straightforward. Usual data engineering task, right? You fetch some data, you put it raw to your data lake, you do some cleaning, do some dirty separation. And you do, the de facto transformation tool, dbt, don't start, what to do to Postgres, but, DuckDB kind of fall to my hands, why not, let's do it before the presentation. So, shot myself in the foot multiple times while doing this, and one of them was actually, choosing DuckDB. So who's not familiar with this, it's like a columnar store for, all app analytics, basically. And it doesn't support, parallel writes to it at the same time. But about that, how it corresponds to why it gave me a hard time, because it took me a while to understand, why it's failing. And it actually failed because I was using dbt seeds. So before I go into details what's dbt seeds and what's not, who uses dbt? Okay, so like a third of a room. Okay, so dbt basically is used now a lot in different companies for data engineering purposes or analytics engineering purposes. And it's just like basically wrapping around SQL with Jinja templating, allowing you, data lineage, and more transformations on your, usual SQL stuff, right? So dbt seeds here is like materializations of CSV files in your database. So in this case, I had like an idea of data warehouse of like simple star schema, fact table and four-dimensional ones. And four-dimensional ones, those were quite easy because, we had like 4 tables from the data dictionary, they have like, I don't know, up to 100 rows or something like that. It doesn't make sense, to load them each time. And it fit nicely into dbt seeds. Now, how we execute dbt seeds is either we run them all and then it's executed sequentially, or you can, call each and every of them, on their own and run them in parallel. So now you can see, where I shot myself in the foot. I'm running 4 of those seeds at the same time and they're all throwing errors apart one. I'll be running just because, that's the easiest way of data engineering, clearing stuff, until it works. So yeah, then I noticed, that in some cases it fails on one orchestrator, in others don't. Dug around more, saw that it's actually, silly me, not thinking through some things. And then I just manually ran the seeds, to have everything running and remove from the orchestration. Easiest way out is, to cut things from your pipelines. Another shooting myself in the foot is, famous MacBook M1 issue. Not all Python libraries are still compatible. There are some nuances. And actually had running all of the 3 mentioned competitors, like orchestrating competitors on M1, and then suddenly one of them just suddenly stopped working. I went, to Slack. As a good person as I am, like providing a lot of code, all of my Docker Compose files and everything. I'm like, guys, it's not working. So they say, hey, just remove the Slack. Remove the, platform Linux AMD64, and it will work fine. Sure, I ran it. It works smoothly. I'm like, okay, no problem. What happens next, right? Who's familiar how Docker runs when you provide a different platform? So yeah, basically it creates an environment, and actually in that environment, things are running slowly. So, I'm running some benchmarks, seeing like that the one without the platform is running like almost 3 times faster. Like, it can't be true. So what happened then, again, dug around in docs and so on, and I had to whip out my Ubuntu laptop, where I just dropped, all of this and ran everything vanilla, and yeah, then it came. So all problems were kind of solved on my end. So let's talk about, the free orchestrators. So straightforward with Apache Airflow. Technically, a lot of dates, if that's interesting. For me, this part is, I hated history at school. I still hate it now. It's fun to know some dates, but I'll provide this presentation later, so you can read it. For me, it's most interesting, is like 2 last rows, is that there is a SaaS company which actually makes money out of it. So they have an interest, to invest and like develop it. And we have 3 our biggest cloud providers, having their own managed version. Though Azure Data Factory is like not entirely the same, I guess. But about the adoption, so Apache 2 license, right? We have quite a huge Slack community. It has a lot of GitHub stars, Docker pulls, and whatnot, right? So just in general, it is one of the oldest orchestrators, not counting, Uzi, if you're using cron jobs, that one. But some people use that, so no judgment. But if we're looking at the architecture, right? Technically, we have UI. We have some scheduler, which actually, parses information and stores, when to run what. We have metadata database. And it looks straightforward, I will not go into nitty-gritty details because actually I'm not an expert on that part, more of the user interface, user, or, creating pipelines when I have time, actually. Oh, it's stuck.
And one?
Might be. So if you're familiar with Airflow, this, is quite straightforward and very, very used for you, I guess, but actually if you notice, if you're using, the newer versions of it, so you can see that there's a new itty-bitty thing, that we got done. Sorry. My clumsy fingers, with the big ones I have. So we have, you can see, that there's a next run and there's, an identifier here. So it's basically a data set. And this thing was released with 2.4, if I'm not mistaken, Apple version. And it actually enables, a lot of other things. But to that we'll go for later on. So Airflow has like, DAG, actually derived acyclic graph. We have, generic things. I'm using decorators because, I'm trying to be, not to show that I'm technically challenged. I'm trying to catch up with, the kids, So using that, other way, we can do, the context manager, but, chasing the tab. And then we have, the task. So if you can see in decorator, we have the outlets part, and there's like a bit of, like hidden code somewhere else, at the top, which I didn't just wanted to show. Later on, you can find it on my GitHub repo. But it actually provides, data set, so we can define dependencies between different tags and trigger them later. So long story short, this is like super straightforward, right? We extract, the date interval start, format it, run the URL, and push it to, the S3 hook, to S3, and we forget about it, right? How the interface looks of those tags, right? 3 tasks here, right? We have dependencies. All of them are Python operators. And then the next one here, we have bash operator, which actually does dbt run with this specific table or like model for talking dbt types. I talked about dbt data set, and this is the neat feature of Airflow which I actually like. So we can see dependencies and what's triggering what. But I see already I'm 10 minutes in and I haven't gotten to any competitors, so I'm going to speed it up more. So if you have any questions and I'm talking too fast, that's another way of me coping with stress, talking way faster. So you can catch me afterwards and we can go into nitty-gritty details if you like. So first one of the two others, so it's Dagster. Again, some history. I not like it, but there's a company behind it, so it's kind of working quite well. And then we have the same Apache license, Slack members 5 times less than Airflow. GitHub stars 4 times. Docker pulls, it's not there just because they're providing you Docker files for you to create, so it's on you. And they're using I think PyCon in general. And we can see that we have 8 million there I think before, and now 526. So there's a difference there. Architecture. So, not going to go into details more, but it's quite similar to Airflow, just a bit differently structured. But long story short, same thing, but just different thing. User interface, it's quite blank, doesn't show much. But if you can see, here we can find we have a job somewhere. We have, the assets, and we have, the deployment. I'm going to talk about those a bit later, but clean. Also, the white theme, not dark. So, as a developer, I'm a bit angry. So I guess I could make a pull request maybe if it's all available to switch to the dark. But so we can see now how the difference about the tags and things. So we have a schedule definition, right? We have a job name, and then we have definitions of our assets. And assets here is basically like a table, file, or whatever we want to call it. And we have some resources we're passing, so it's very similar to connections. And since we're using dbt, of course, we have to provide dbt project path, dbt profiles, directory, and of course the schedule on which we want to run. So it would know who's connected to what. The thing is, same basically kind of the same code that just tweaks here and there, but majority of it is the same. Instead of as free hook, we're using context resources, and we're doing basically the same thing. Only difference here is that we have the partition definition, so it can run partitions in parallel. Just the only issue is that you have to be sure, that you ensure that they can run, parallel. If it's not an incremental job, insert updates, and suddenly your data is messed up because run something a bit sooner than it should. Now I mentioned assets. So basically, what we call, asset here is can be a file, can be a some database table, it can be a dbt model, and you can neatly see, what connects to what, right? Quite straightforward. I didn't have to do a lot, apart, from defining, dbt manifest parsing for the Dagster. So it actually, picked it up automatically and added all the dependencies here. Mage. Now this is one where I had the most issues. So remember, when I mentioned that I ran suddenly it doesn't work. It doesn't work on L1. So this bad boy did that. Another thing what I didn't like about it, I'm going to do a bit rant here, right? So bear with me. It's going to get better. So a rant here is that I was thinking I want to now do the same routine and reload, for the missing periods, the same data, right, do a backfill or whatnot. So this is my first experience with Mage. I, run everything up, I create everything. I do a hard code update because, I'm a bit lazy, at the start. And then, okay, I should make a backfill, so that's the comparison, with other. And they have no clue how it works because I tried, to do it and just nothing is happening. So, as a good person as I am, I go rant on their Slack channel. Their CEO, responds and he's digging with the details, and I think he went to sleep on his local time, I think at 2 a.m. or whatnot after fixing, my issue. So, that's the support you get, from these kind of early projects, right? You get quite higher ups, involved and fixing your issues. So that's the benefit of it. But in general, not here to bash. Support is quite good, as I noticed firsthand. And the history, like the company is super fresh, right? They did the first release less than a year ago, like almost a year, but it doesn't have a license yet, so most likely there might be some nuances as we go further. Slack, quite small, right? 20 times less than Airflow, 4 times less than Dagster. They just upcoming one, and like the influencer I mentioned at the start, is like pushing it as well. So let's see where it goes in like 2 or 3 years. So architecture, also no information here. Only my assumptions, so I might be completely off, but doing some assumptions, I'm good at making assumptions, Working in management, like teaches you some things. Do assumptions. So assumptions I noticed, is that it has the same metadata DB you can choose. Like it has to call server, but actually, just couple the web and backend together. So like, that's why in a way it runs faster in some situations. And the executors, like very similar to Creator, to add Airflow and Dagster, right? It just spins up, some Kubernetes pod and runs them there. If running on kites, but user interface, that's what I like, that feel, I like to live under the rock, just type in the dark. So I liked it a lot. Looks fresh, has very neat live chat button. It prompts you to update. This is the newer version there. So this picture was taken, like screenshot taken after I have updated with the fix. So that's why it doesn't complain that I'm using not the newest version. It looks fun and shiny, some cool colors, maybe for some of you. I know 16 basic ones, so it's a bit too much. But let's talk about the DAGs of like schedules. So schedule UI based. So if I like to use my ID and its own provided functionalities like autocomplete and other things, right? Like go do things on UI. It's a bit tedious and I hate it. So that's one thing. Check for some maybe YAML file, but I couldn't find it because everything there is connected via YAMLs. So shout out to every one of you, YAML engineers out there. And then we can check how the code is there. So they're working with notebook kind of approach. You open their web kind of thingy, and then you type things. You're choosing I'm gonna load the data, I'm gonna extract the data, I'm gonna transform the data, whatnot. So there are some pre-configured like snippets for you to use. So kind of trying to chase around the autocompletes and whatnot. But in general, the same code Python code works with small tweaks here and there, and that's it. Only neat thing, that who's been working, with Airflow, that there is a execution date. They switched, like introduced data interval start, data interval end, and they here only have, like execution date as a start, like maybe at some point we'll add it. But knowing, if it's going to be a pressing matter for you, on Slack you might get a lot of support, and they just push over like 7 hours or whatnot. Yeah, but technically, works quite easily. You write everything on your own, and you're good. Very nice lineage. It's shown on your pipeline on the right. Shiny, DBT colors, some of the other colors, but not the colors are here. Like, I'm not here for the colors, right? So let's talk about comparisons and what actually, wanted to discuss with you. Timings, like long story short, same Python code was executed, so the difference are not that big between each task execution. If I would run it, like multiple times, it should be somewhat the same. But if you notice, that the total time is different for all of them. So what I noticed, right, that in Dagster it was taking like 10 almost seconds, to start the first task. Hence, it's kind of takes longer, right? Airflow is quite okay, right? And then we have Mage. Like I mentioned, remember, I mentioned that web and backend was coupled together. So most likely that's the reason why it's faster a bit, less exchange, So yeah, simply on my thoughts in summary, I'm running quite good on time. Dagster. Technically, if you're working with Airflow, definitions are quite the same. There are like more terms, assets, right? So it's basically the same as dataset. You have ops as a task. If you want to send the email, as a part of your like pipeline, you just use ops instead of like asset, because actually you're not creating any like materialized like table or whatnot. Feels more Pythonic because you're actually creating more functions. You have pre-made migration scripts where you can easily plug your Airflow things and then add Dagster related matters, and it's quite easy and straightforward. Feels a bit more clean and lightweight. Looking at Docker Compose runtimes, it's way faster and it's way smoother. We're living in a wonderful world where LLMs help us a lot. Knowing that it's quite a not that new, not that old library, right? Adoption of it's not that big. Copilot ChatGPT can't help you much at this moment. And for me, maybe it's just me, like I mentioned, I'm trying to pick up, the cool kids, try to use new things, but like how to structure everything properly was a bit more harder to pick up. So, but again, it might be just me being technically challenged. What I actually like is this neat, data lineage. So you have, all your things, coming from DBT as well, from your other assets of like, extraction here. So it feels smooth and nice. See everything in one place, and you have multi-repository deployments. So you can give your data engineers run their own REPL, plug it, then you have your ML team, do something similar, and just use the same asset definitions, and you're good to go, right? You don't need to worry about some clashes over things. Like usually there are sometimes Airflow. Then with Mage, notebook style. So for some of you, it might be a good thing. For some of you, a bad thing. Not sure how you are feeling with Databricks and Spark in general, but it's similar kind of situation there. Hard to pick up things if you're an IDE person, because everything is done on web. So and what happens on the web then translates to some YAML files behind the scenes. So you have to know a lot of how it's happening on the web. What I actually like, and this would be like I would say in my eyes, the top requested feature at Airflow is that you can throw a bunch of tasks and then open UI and just drag the dependencies from them, right? That's the tedious task, right? To figure out what depends on what. So in Dagster, you just drag and drop things, super easy way. Again, Copilot ChatGPT doesn't help you. A bit buggy, like I mentioned, but very, very quick support. Can't complain on that. DBT things if you're using, so super specific placements of your credentials, profile sample, and DBT directory in general. So it's a bit tedious. They kind of have streaming pipelines, but actually it's like a continuous running of, if I'm not mistaken, Python Kafka library. Works and then suddenly does it, right? So lacks maturity. So is it actually? So my eyes, not yet, at least for 2-3 years, for sure. Basically, it's highly driven by community, and with the latest releases of 2.5 and I think 2.6, with the dataset inclusion 2.4, they're actually doing a great job and dealing with their competition. A lot of pre-built things, or just plug in some data and values, and it works fine. It's more battle tested, and works better, and adopts the changing needs, for you to template it and play around as much as you need. So, long story short, do you have any questions? Anyone questions? We have, I think, one minute for questions. If not, there's lunch gonna be there, Should. How about Deborah?
Not really. Yeah, I'm wondering there seems to be like a divide in the industry between the data scientists working in notebooks to do the modeling and so on, and data engineers or machine learning engineers, I don't know, that put that into production. Do you think the choice of the orchestrator matters for data scientists, or if there is an orchestrator that is more approachable for data scientists, or it's not really, in your opinion, their job to care about these things?
Like usually, developer experience matters for everyone, right? So in my eyes, if we're looking from this brief, the most developer friendly from data scientist wise, side, right? It's going to be Mage, right? You're used to your Jupyter notebooks, you do the same thing, on this way, and you can just easily, push it there, right? For the full work. So on that end, yes, but most likely, engineers are going to hate it, like they hate, anyway working with notebooks, right? So you have to think carefully, what's like the common, like the greater good, for the whole team.
Thanks.
Okay, so thank you for listening in, and if you have any questions, catch me. I'm gonna be here all day. Thank you.